Happy Good Friday. One of the questions that a lot of people ask because they know that Jesus was crucified on this day, they ask, what's so good about Good Friday? I'm glad you asked. That's what we're going to talk about. You know, in order to understand Good Friday, we have to talk about the Good Shepherd, and we have to talk about his sheep. In fact, we have to talk about sheep in general. About 700 years before Jesus was born, one of God's prophets, Isaiah, said this: "All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. And the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him." What does that mean? And how could Isaiah talk about Jesus 700 years before he was born? Well, we have to let Jesus interpret that. He's the good shepherd who laid down his life for the sheep. And so when you read the Bible and find out that Jesus talked a lot about sheep, we learn things from him. One of the things Jesus did was told a parable. He told a parable about a shepherd who has 100 sheep, and one of them wanders away. And he said, now, what do you think a shepherd would do? A good shepherd leaves the 99 in the fold. They're not going to wander off. And he goes off and rescues the one wandering sheep. And then he said, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost. Jesus also talked about the good shepherd. And he said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Now, I'm going to tell you about a sheep that wandered off, because that's what sheep do. The sheep's name is Shrek. Not that one. This is a sheep in New Zealand. And several years ago, he was a part of a large flock of sheep. And when you keep sheep, the main way sheep make you money is they have to be sheared. Well, I guess Shrek didn't want to be sheared. And so he wandered off. In fact, he avoided being caught for 6 years. And so his wool got very, very long. Shrek was a sheep that wandered off, and the shepherd had to go find him. Do you know that's what Good Friday is about? It's about wandering sheep. It's about the good shepherd. And it's about the price that had to be paid by the good shepherd to rescue his wandering sheep. What was the price? Well, we need to look at the events of Good Friday to see what that price was. We left off on Maundy Thursday talking about Jesus being arrested in the garden after that Last Supper. Well, Jesus was horribly abused all of that night, and early in the morning, while it was still dark on Good Friday, Jesus was brought to trial before a man named Annas and a man named Caiaphas. They were Jewish men. Well, early in the morning, when Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor, came on duty, they brought Jesus before Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate said, oh, he's a Galilean, and he sent him over to a man named Herod Antipas. He was abused more and mocked more there. He came back and appeared before Pilate. He was sentenced to be crucified. Only the Romans could do that, and so the governor said, well, let him be crucified. And so on a piece of wood was written the charges against Jesus. The charge was, this is Jesus of Nazareth. That was why they crucified him, and that was what Pilate wanted everyone to know. And so Jesus had to carry a big piece of his cross up the hill outside the city to a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. In fact, Jesus had been so wearied from being beaten and abused that he couldn't even carry the cross himself. And so the Roman soldiers had to enlist the help of a man named Simon. Well, at about 9 o'clock in the morning on Good Friday, that piece of the cross that had been carried up the hill was laid on the ground, and Jesus was put on top of that, and his arms were stretched out, and nails were pounded into his hands and into his feet. And that cross piece was put up on a pole so it looked like the cross that we're used to seeing. And Jesus was sentenced to hang there until he died. While Jesus was hanging on the cross, the soldiers were gambling for his clothing because they figured he didn't need clothing anymore where he was going, to the grave. And yet while they were gambling for his clothing, Jesus was praying for them. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. The soldiers were watching the crucifixion. Some of them were even mocking Jesus. Well, he can't even save himself. How's he going to save us? If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross and save us. Well, around noon, Jesus was speaking to the thieves, the other men who were being crucified. And during that time, one of the thieves who had earlier been mocking Jesus realized, I need Jesus. He realized that Jesus wasn't going to stay in the grave. And so he turned to him and said, Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, today you will be with me in paradise. And then during that time, just before noon, Jesus said to his mother, Mary, woman, here's your son. And to John, John, here's your mother. And then it got dark. In fact, for 3 hours, there was a darkness over the land. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the ground started to shake. The curtain of the temple was torn in two, and Jesus called out, I'm thirsty. He called out, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. He cried out, it is finished. And then at 3 in the afternoon, he died, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? After this, before the night had set in, the soldiers thrust a spear into Jesus' side to make sure that he really was dead. And then they allowed Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man, to take down Jesus' body and to bury it in his own tomb. And they took a big stone. They rolled it in front of that tomb. It wasn't the kind of tomb in the ground like we know. It was kind of like a cave. And they sealed the grave with this big stone so that no animals could get in and no thieves could get in and rob the tomb. What are you and I going to learn from Good Friday? Because it really does sound bad, doesn't it? Except we learned that what happened on Good Friday is the price that the Good Shepherd had to pay for his wandering sheep. Good Friday is about Jesus going after his wandering sheep. The question we should ask you is, are you one of them? Are you one of his sheep? Here's what Jesus said. In John chapter 10, Jesus said this, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give eternal life to them, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. Jesus' sheep follow him. Are you a follower of Jesus? Have you believed this good news? You know, this is the darkness of Good Friday is going to lead on into some darkness of Saturday. But Sunday is coming. Good Friday is only good if you are a follower of Jesus. I'll see you tomorrow.